All right, today we're going to start Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is called Pre-Algebra Goodness because it's just lots of things that we need to cover as we wrap up our year. Okay, so 10.1 is equations with a distributive property. Then we have equations with variables on both sides is our next lesson. So today we'll be able to solve an equation that involves the distributive property, identify when to combine like terms, and explain which step to take and why. Okay? So for these first ones, we're going to just simplify using the distributive property. So remember the distributive property goes pew, pew. Okay, so we have 5 times x plus 5 times 4. Okay, and 5 times x is really just 5x plus 5 times 4 is really just 20. Okay. So here, before I start, I'm going to change this to adding the opposite. So adding, and the opposite of a positive 8 is a negative 8. Okay, and then I'm going to go pew, pew. So I have 2 times 7y plus 2 times negative 8. And 2 times 7y would be 14y. 2 times negative 8 would be negative 16. All right, and then our last one. This one I have this negative 13u. It's not in the parentheses, so it just hangs out by itself. Pew, pew. Just those two get the 6. So 6 times 9u plus 6 times 5. And then this negative 13u is just hanging on. Okay, so 6 times 9 is 54. So 54u. Plus 6 times 5 is 50. No, not 50, 30. Plus negative 13u. Okay, I have like terms here. These are both u's, so I'm going to switch these two around. 54u plus negative 13u plus 30. I'm going to combine these two. Okay, so 54 plus negative 13. Since one's positive and one is negative, we'd subtract. And we would get 41, I think. Yeah, 41u, positive, because I have more positives. So 41u plus 30. Oh, no, I boxed that one. I didn't box these ones. Who knows? I'll go back and do that. All right, so that was just with expressions. That took us like a whole day last time. This time, we're going to do that while we do this, okay? So we're going to solve this equation. I'm going to start by writing it, 3 times x, and I'm going to change the subtracting to adding. So instead of a positive 4, it's going to be a negative 4 equals 18. Okay, so first thing we need to do is distribute. Pew, pew. So 3 times x plus 3 times negative 4 equals 18. And I would have at this point already drawn my line. I don't know why I didn't. Okay, so 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 equals 18. Okay, so now we're going to solve this. The best friend of the x is that 3, so we want to keep those together. This negative 12 is what's hanging out by itself. So to get rid of adding a negative 12, we're going to add a positive 12 to both sides. So I do it to one side, and I'm going to put it right underneath that negative 12. And if I do it to one, I do it to the other. So over here, that undoes that. It's the inverse, so I'm left with 3x equals 18 plus 12. 8 plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. That would be 1, 2, 3, 30. Okay, now to get x by itself, I'm multiplying by 3. So to undo multiplying by 3, we would divide by 3 on both sides. And to divide, we use that fraction line. So divide by 3, x equals 10. So for a quick check, we're going to plug it in. So if I have 3 times a quantity of 10 minus 4 equals 18. So I want to see if this works. I can actually I don't have to distribute on my check. So 10 minus 4 is 6. So does 3 times 6. 3 times 6 is 18. So it is equal. Okay, number 2, we're solving this equation. This one's very similar to the other one, it's just that our x is on the other side, which is totally fine. So negative 44 equals 2 times the quantity of 4x plus 2. So first thing I'm going to do is distribute. Pew, pew. Okay, so I have negative 44 equals 2 times 4 is 8, so 8x. And 2 times 2 is 4. Now notice I didn't actually write that step down. If you want to write that down, please do, especially if you're having trouble with that building background, you really should write that down. Okay? So now best friend of the x is the 8. They're hanging out. So I want to get rid of this adding 4. So to undo adding a positive 4, we're going to add a negative 4 to both sides. If I'm going to put it right underneath that 4, because that's what I'm getting rid of, I'm going to go to the other side. Okay, these are both negative, so I would add 44 plus 4 is 48. It's going to be negative, equals, bring down the 8x, and these undo each other. So now to undo multiplying by 8, we would divide by 8 on both sides. So divide by 8, divide by 8. So that undoes that 8, so I'm left just with the x. 48 divided by 8 is 6, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So x equals negative 6. Okay, quick check. Does negative 44 equal 2 times quantity of 4 times our x, so 4 times negative 6 plus 2. Okay, and I'm just going to plug that in my calculator for a quick check just to make sure it works. It's going to have 2, and then parentheses are down here. So parenthesis 4 times negative 6 plus 2. Whoops, I put a 0 there though. Okay, and that is negative 44. So it worked. Okay. All right, 2 more problems. All right, this one, first thing we're going to convert. So I have a fraction and I have a decimal, which means I want my answer as decimals. So I'm going to do 2 divided by 5. And I get 0 and 4/10. Okay, so when I write this, instead of saying 2/5, I'm going to say 0 and 4/10 times the quantity of c plus 8 and 5/10 equals 18. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is distribute. Pew, pew. Really, it's the second thing because we converted was our first step. So I have 0 and 4/10 times c plus 0 and 4/10 times 8 and 5/10 equals 18. Okay, I know that this is going to be 0 and 4/10 c plus, and I don't know what that turns out to be, so I'm going to just use my calculator quick. 0 and 4/10 times 8 and 5/10 is 3 and 4/10. Okay, so to undo, well, the c is hanging out with the 4/10, so we want to keep those. So to undo adding 3 and 4/10, we would add a negative 3 and 4/10 to both sides. Okay, so I'm going to put it right underneath this 3 and 4/10. If I do it to one, I do it to the other. So on the left side, I'm still left with that 0 and 4/10. And then 18 plus negative 3 and 4/10. And I'm just going to use my calculator. 18 plus negative 3 and 4/10. And I get 14 and 6/10. Okay, I'm multiplying by 4/10, so I'm going to divide by 4/10 on both sides. So divide by 0 and 4/10. Okay, so I'm just going to divide. Remember that has that a and s, and that's just going to use my last answer, which is that 14 and 6/10. So divide by 0 and 4/10, and I get 36 and 5/10. Hopefully that is right, because I actually have no clue. Okay, so check. Good thing we can check. We're going to double check that 2/5 times 36 and 5/10 plus 8 and 5/10 equals 18. Okay, so I'm going to just plug that in my calculator, just that one side. So 2/5 times 36 5/10 plus 8 5/10. And that is 18, so it did work. Okay, all right, last one. This one's a little bit different. Hopefully you can see that. I have 6 times -2w. I'm going to change that subtracting to adding, and instead of a +8, it'll be a -8, plus 5w equals -27. Okay, so what's different is on this left side, I have this parenthesis here, but I also have this plus 5w. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is distribute. Pew, pew. So 6 times -2, 6 times 2 is 12. W, positive times a negative is a negative, plus 6 times 8 is 48, but it's going to be a negative, and then plus 5w equals -27. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is combine like terms. Okay, so I have this 5w and this -12w on the same side. So if they're on the same side, I can add them together. So I'm going to rewrite it as -12w. You might need to write it a little bit smaller. Sorry, I should have done that. Made this box a little bit bigger. -48 equals -27. Maybe I'll make it bigger before I print it. Okay, so now I'm going to combine these two, which we can do that because of the commutative and associative properties. So -12 plus 5, they're different, so I would subtract. 12 minus 5 is 7. I have more negatives, so -7w plus -48 equals -27. Okay. Okay, so to get rid of adding -48, we're going to add a positive 48 to both sides. And because they're different, we actually subtract. And my brain's just not really working this morning, so I'm going to use my calculator, which is totally fine. -27 plus 48 is 21. And it's a positive. Okay? So now to get rid of multiplying by -7, we would divide by -7 on both sides. So divide by -7, divide by -7. So w equals -3. Okay, now for a check, I'm just going to write it down here because I ran out of space. We're going to have 6 parenthesis -2 times my w. My w is -3 minus 8 parenthesis plus 5 times my w, -3. Now I want to see, does that equal -27? So in my calculator, I'm going to just type that whole thing in using those parentheses. So 6 parenthesis -2 times -3 minus 8 plus 5 times -3. Now on my calculators, what's really cool is if you use mine, there's this equal sign. So if I want to say equals -27, it's going to tell me true or false, and it's true. I think that's kind of cool, personally. It's interesting. Okay, so that worked. Bam, done. Be sure to distribute evenly. Okay, that's really important. What that means is if I have 3 times x plus 2, make sure you go to both sides. 3 times x and 3 times 2. We should have that 3 2 times. Okay? All right, and that is it.